Welcome to Bucs Insider Live. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And man, we are so close to training camp. It's finally
ready
almost
to
here.
Sweat?
Oh yeah, always just so excited. At least we're excited for football to return, so it makes the sweating for a purpose. Yeah. We're excited about it.
And a couple days in, we'll get them in pads, and it'll really be exciting.
Yeah, we'll finally be able to tell some things, especially about maybe some of these linemen, some of these bigger positions. It's going to be great. We hope a lot of you are going to be joining us at training camp if you can, and then if not, we hope you'll be watching. We'll be doing our training camp live show like we have the last several years. It's going to be great. So let's go ahead and get started with some trivia, because training camp is not the only exciting thing about to happen.
Yeah, we're getting really close to the Ronde Barber going into the Hall of Fame day, and so your trivia question today is Ronde Barber, who will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Saturday, August 5, recorded 47 career regular season interceptions. Which quarterback did he intercept most often? That's the question.
I like it. All right, so if you think you know the answer or just have some guesses, leave them underneath our live video on the Facebook page. If I see some correct answers out there, I'll try to shout you guys out. So again, underneath the Facebook live video, leave your answers to that trivia question. And as we brought up, almost time to see Ronde Barber in that so deserved gold jacket. And we happen to have a video of him receiving the jacket for the first time, which is really exciting. And I know that just Bucs fans in general have been waiting for this moment for so long. I mean, obviously not as much as Rondé has, but I can't imagine what this feels like for him, and just how amazing to have so many members of that defense now all sharing in the gold jacket Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I didn't even know they got their gold jackets sent to them at home ahead of time. I thought they got it when they got up to Canton. But it's one of the two, or one of a few very iconic things that come along with being inducted to the Hall of Fame. The other one being the bronze bust, which I asked him about the process of being fitted, I guess you would say, for that, and apparently it was very in-depth because they want to make it look as lifelike as possible. So
absolutely,
it was an interesting experience, and pretty soon he'll see the finished works, but he's getting his gold jacket already, which must have been exciting.
I feel like that'd be so much pressure to be the person making the bust.
I think it's just one guy.
Oh, geez.
Who's just an expert at it.
That's a lot of stress of like making.
He's just good at it.
If people like how they look in that form. I think I remember seeing some story about Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever getting one that just
that
didn't
was
look
like a statue.
Yes,
that was weird.
Didn't look anything like him. I feel like that would be very stressful. All right, so also coming up during training camp, there's going to be some joint practices that the Bucs are going to participate in, and they're an even bigger deal potentially than they normally would be, because of who they're against.
Yeah, it's funny because the Bucs were on Hard Knocks a few years back. Was it 2017, something like that? And you probably thought that was the last time you were going to see the Bucs on Hard Knocks for a while, because you're ineligible, or you can say no for a decade after being on it once. But the Bucs are going to be on, in a way, Hard Knocks again this year, because they're going to be visiting the Jets, who are this year's, against their will apparently, featured team. And we're going to be doing joint practices with them before our game up there. So at their practice facility, August 16th and 17th, that's a Wednesday and a Thursday. I mean, obviously the spotlight's going to be on the Jets, but the Bucs are clearly going to be in the action, right?
Yeah.
And then the game too, you've seen Hard Knocks, they always cover the game in depth and stuff that comes out of that. So it'll be a little bit of an ancillary thing, but Bucs fans that like to watch Hard Knocks are going to particularly enjoy that week's episode, I would imagine. Yeah,
and so maybe if you weren't planning on tuning in this year, at least know that there's going to be 1 week of it.
I don't know. I think I kind of want to watch this one more. The Aaron Rodgers thing and the fact that they don't want to be on it. I just want to see how they handle that.
Yeah.
It could be really interesting.
It is an interesting dynamic of how much do they, quote unquote, cooperate, how much access do they give or not. And yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, that's a draw no matter what.
Right.
I don't care who
you don't know what he's going to do.
Love him or hate him, everyone's going to want to watch what he's going to do. All right, so another thing that we're going to be watching in training camp, obviously the position battles. It's always the most fun part of training camp, either for starting roles or for roster spots. And I think one of the groups that maybe is a little bit less talked about overall, but is going to be really interesting in this camp, is tight end. That
for sure.
It felt like for several years there was a lot of certainty in some ways in that position of, you drafted O.J. Howard really high. You kind of knew what that was going to be.
You had Cam
Brate for all those years, that it didn't have as much uncertainty or intrigue, maybe at least at the top of the depth chart. But now this group is so young, very few NFL reps. You've got a young draft pick. You got, I mean, your elder statesmen in the room are in their second year. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's probably the youngest tight end group in the league. And when you had Rob Gronkowski, your tight end room was basically defined as Rob Gronkowski.
Right.
I mean, you had other guys, but what your tight ends were was Rob Gronkowski. So last year was the first year without him. They drafted Kate Otten and Co. Kieft, and that went pretty well. And that was the beginning of the evolution of this room. And then this year, you draft another guy in the 5th round, Payne Durham, and I think you're going to see how that continues to evolve. And now Brianna Dix, our friend, our coworker, team staff writer, reporter, did a story earlier this week on how that might evolve, looking at what Seattle did, because Dave Canales comes from that offense, and how they use their tight ends. And she took a look at how that might translate to how the Bucs use their tight ends, and why the Bucs drafted Payne Durham a year after drafting Co. Kieft and Kate Otten, right? 3 tight ends drafted in 2 years, and those are your top 3 guys, presumably. Yeah. If you look at this, you can see the stark reason. Now, it's a little bit reductive to say whatever Seattle did, the Bucs are going to do. But still, I think you can expect us to move in that direction, because he's going to be bringing a lot of those offensive concepts. Now look at this, 12 package personnel, which is 2 tight ends. The Seahawks last year used it almost 30% of the time, whereas the Bucs were one of the lowest teams in the league at 17.4%. And if you look at the top 3 tight ends and how many offensive snaps they got, their 3rd tight end, Colby Parkinson, had more snaps than our 2nd tight end.
Wow.
So you see Kate Otten with the most, because he was the true wide end that played 75% of the time. It was a blocker and a receiver, but there wasn't that much 2 tight end work. Now with Payne Durham there, who also, like Cade, is hopefully both a blocking and a pass catching threat, you can use more 12 personnel and really not show the defense what you're going to do, and really be able to disguise and run different plays out of the same look, and really just use the tight ends quite a bit more. And I think we're going to see that.
That's going to be interesting. All right, well, I see we have an answer.
Oh.
For our trivia question. I'm going to put it on the screen. Let's see if Kyle is correct.
Do we have to reveal that now? Are we revealing? Are we?
Yep, this is the reveal. Once I get an answer, I'm giving them credit.
All right, Kyle, nice job. Nailed it. Aaron Brooks. I thought that one was a little bit harder.
That was
that's
challenging.
Pretty darn good. One of our people here on the show, Cody, also got it right. So I guess it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. Well, you said you thought maybe Drew Brees.
Yeah, I just thought, okay, well, who would have been around a long time and with a team that we would have played a lot? Like, that was just kind of my first thought. But
well, the funny thing is that's true of Aaron Brooks and the Saints, but Ronde actually got those 6 interceptions in just 2 games.
Which is crazy.
He had 2 3 interceptions. There's only been 4 3-interception games in team history by a single individual, and he has 2 of them, and they were both against Aaron Brooks. One of them was in that game at LSU because of hurricane. Which hurricane was that?
Katrina?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina. So, Rondé did it to him twice, 6 interceptions. That's the most against any quarterback.
It's so funny to me how every time I feel like I learn some new stat that's interesting about the Bucs, the answer is always Rondé or Levante. Like, it's just every time I'm like, really? It's one of the 2 of them.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It's like when you're watching Family Feud. If you don't know the question, just guess church.
Right.
Church is almost always one of the answers.
Almost always one of the things. All right, so again, as we talk about some things to pay attention to in training camp, we've talked about these position battles and making the roster. Undrafted rookies are always, to me, again, not necessarily something that's getting the biggest headlines going into camp, but is one of those things that is fun to watch because they're the ones just fighting for their lives. They're the ones trying to make the roster, trying to get those last few spots. They may not be somebody you're going to take in fantasy football, but they could be people that can really make some big plays, especially on special teams or other ways throughout the season. If there are injuries, guys that need to step up, there's always 1 or 2 that usually end up being exciting contributors to the team. So what are you paying attention to with that group? You
usually have between 15 and 20 of them, and going into it that the majority of those guys are probably not going to make it in the NFL. They're fantastic players, but you have to be the absolute cream of the crop just to make it in the NFL, right? But what is a success? What would you call a success for a guy who doesn't get drafted, signed as an undrafted free agent? Personally, I think if they're around for a second cap, that's already a success. That means they've maybe gotten a spot, on the active roster, but if not, maybe they got a spot on the practice squad, stuck there the whole year. Maybe they got elevated for some games, saw some action. So I'm just looking at the last 3 years, and these were guys that were undrafted free agents, like in the leftmost column in 2022, and they're back now. So they still have a shot to make it with the Bucs or in the NFL. And you look at a guy like Devin Tompkins, obviously, he's going to be battling for the 4th receiver job, for the kick return job that he had for a portion of last year. Right now, Nolan Turner is basically the 3rd safety on the depth chart. You look at 2021, it was kind of a shorter list. And while those guys made it back, none of them really stuck. But then you go back to 2022, 2020, you see Cam Gill there. You see Nick Leverett, who started a whole bunch of games last year.
John Mulchin's still around.
Mulchin's still around trying to make a spot. And a lot of those guys, they've gotten their foothold in the NFL, and that is the very first, that should be the very first goal for every guy that's undrafted, or even the late round draft guys. It's just like, I got to do enough to show that they should keep me around. I'm showing something that they think, maybe even if it's not right now, because we have that spot filled, somewhere down the road, this guy's going to be important for us. So, you know, for all those guys that make it even to a second camp, to me, that's already a success, and it's put them in position to be even more successful.
One of the things I always think is interesting around these guys with camp is that it's one of the areas where there's like some deception used, because coaches won't always want to talk about the guys they really like.
Yes.
Because they don't want other teams
100% true.
to know and try to steal them or whatever if they end up wanting to try to bring them back on a practice squad. And so I feel like that's one of the really fun areas to come to camp, see if you can pick out who those guys are, and be able to say you knew, even though Coach or Jason weren't talking about it in their press conferences. I always think that's an interesting thing.
I've even had, I won't name any names, but I've even had people in the personnel department say, hey, if you can, don't write about that guy.
Yep.
So if you're writing about this guy who seems like he's an undrafted guy or something, if you're being allowed to write about him, he's probably not going to make it. Or if you're writing about guys they'll let you write about guys like Mike Evans because you know you're going to make it. If you write about the guys that are on the bubble, they'd prefer you didn't.
They prefer,
because they know that their scouts look at other teams' websites and see what they're writing about. And so they're like, we know we do it, so they probably do it too, and let's just not bring attention to these guys.
I think you should write about the fact that I'm auditioning to be a wide receiver, see if other teams start picking it up, call and see if that works.
We have to find out, get some film on this person.
We got to give this a shot. All right, that is going to do it for us on Bucs Insider Live. Again, we will be back here. Camp is starting really next week.
I can't believe it.
Next week. There we are. So make sure you're staying tuned for all the coverage on Buccaneers.com for all of our training camp lives, and we'll see you then.